guess we'd call this a novella. It's kind of autobiographical, and it's about a guy reminiscing about a time earlier in his life when he played a lot of pinball. There's also another guy, and his connection to the first is pinball. Beyond that, I don't actually remember how they're related. Also, that first guy, the lucky bugger, is living and sleeping with twins, and it's all set in 1973. As you can probably already tell, this is a very Murakami book, but maybe for me, not quite Murakami enough. And I'm a big fan of his. I found with his books that the stories don't always make sense on a narrative level, because it's just like weird characters in a weird world doing weird things every day, and his books are just like a random snapshot of that. Somehow, there's always fish falling from the skies, wells appearing in offices, but strangely, none of those out of the blue signature fantasy elements are in this book. So even though narratively his books are a bit like what the hell is going on here, I always find closure in Murakami's books. They make sense on an emotional level, and going over a few of his interviews, he seems very intuitive and gut driven with his writing. Like, why wouldn't this character just spot an entrance to an underground labyrinth on his commute? There's a lot of himself psychologically in his books. Pinball 1973 though, a lot of himself, not much closure for me. His prose is, as ever, beautiful and worth the read, and the experience reading this short book was enjoyable. Funny bits, strange bits, non sequitur bits, tangents, the usual Murakami stuff, but it just didn't feel well put together. Raw is how a friend of mine describes it, and I know exactly what she means. It's one of his earliest books, and knowing that going into it made this book really interesting to read. Like, this is where he started. It's just that at the end I was left with okay. I just happened to have bought the vintage edition of this book, and it has a really great introduction by Murakami. And it's all about how he got into writing, and as origin stories go, it's as Murakami as it gets. He also details his process of writing in those early days, which is also very Murakami. This was his second book, and part of what he calls his coffee table novels, because he wrote them at his coffee table. And reading that introduction refreshed my appreciation of this author. Like, he's such a unique and authentic voice. He just writes fearlessly. Like, I'm sure you also get the sense that this guy really isn't stopped by anything. Reviews, critics, whatever. He just does regardless. And Murakami just did Pinball 1973. And then he did the next one, and the next one, and the next one, which is very Murakami and also quite inspiring.